You for overthinking texting to the point where you don't respond. You for being so soft-spoken. You for not going all the way on your calls. You, 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 you for holding back. You for being afraid of being found out. You for crying every day. You for being scared. You for not asking the tough questions. You for not having the confidence to say what you need to say. You for not showing yourself love at all.
I wrote that to myself at 1 a.m. in my parents' attic, in my journal. And I meant every single word. And I genuinely believed in that moment that saying those things to myself was going to be the thing that fixed me. Newsflash, it wasn't. And if you've ever beaten yourself up for not being good at sales, if you've ever found yourself sitting in the dark wondering why you can't just get it together, I need you to hear why that approach will never work and what actually does. Quick context if we haven't met, my name is Princess and I left nursing school about 3.5 years ago to get into sales. And I did this with no background in sales, no training, just the decision that the income ceiling that I could see in nursing was not the one I was willing to live with. My first offer that I ever sold was actually functional medicine, and I thought it would be easy because of my background and, with school, but I was so anxious before every single call. I dreaded the end of every call to the point where I was having panic attacks on every call. And that's because I knew what was coming at the end. And so that season when I was living in my parents' attic, cursing myself out every night was very real. And the consequences were not just emotional. They were showing up in my income every single month. And that fear was so expensive. So fast forward to last year, I collected over 3.4 million in cash and I've been able to invest in real estate. And now I help other closers achieve their version of life-changing income. And today, what I'm going to share with you has nothing to do with tactics or frameworks or scripts. It is the thing underneath all of that, the foundation. And without it, I promise you, nothing else works long term. Not the frameworks, not the training, not the mindset content, nothing. I want to describe something to you, and I need you to be honest with yourself about whether or not this sounds familiar. You open your calendar, it's full, you've got calls stacked back to back to back, and instead of feeling so excited about all the opportunity on your calendar, you feel something closer to dread. You feel this heaviness, like the calendar is something that's happening to you rather than the most exciting opportunity ever. You get on calls, you're going through the motions, and there's this anxiety underneath everything. This awareness that the end of the call is coming and you don't know what's going to happen. And that uncertainty has its own weight, right? And then you don't close the deal and you get off the call and the replay in your head starts immediately. Why didn't I push harder there? Why didn't I let that go? Oh, I shouldn't have asked that question. Oh, I knew exactly what I needed to do and I stopped short again. And at some point, maybe 11 p.m., 1 a.m., maybe in the shower the next morning, it stops being about the call and it starts being about you. What is actually wrong with me? Why can't I just make the change? I know better than this. I should be further by now. Can I see some hands, whether it's in your head or in the comments, if that spiral sounds familiar? Here's what I need to say about that spiral. And this is the thing that nobody in sales will tell you. It feels productive. That is the most dangerous thing about it because it genuinely feels like you're taking responsibility. It feels like the right response to underperforming. It sounds like accountability. It looks like someone who cares so much about their growth, who is not making excuses, someone who's holding themselves to a very high standard. But here's what it actually is. It is the most self-centered place you can be as a closer. Think about it for a second. Every single ounce of your mental and emotional energy is on you, your failure, your inadequacy, your inability to figure this out. The story about you not being enough is on a loop all day, and you have to convince yourself that listening to it is a form of self-improvement. I'm just reflecting. It is not self-improvement. It is self-destruction dressed up as self-improvement. And here is why that distinction matters so much, especially in sales, because sales requires you to be completely present for another human being. It requires you to be genuinely curious about them and to hold space for their fear, their goals, their resistance, their truth, to lead them somewhere. And you cannot do that when you are drowning in yourself. The closer who walks onto a call already in their own head, who's carrying the weight of yesterday's losses and the deals you didn't close last week and your commissions last month, that closer cannot lead anyone anywhere because they are way too busy trying to survive their own internal storm. And that spiral doesn't just feel bad. It is costing you so much money. The anxiety that you're generating by beating yourself up is the same energy that your prospects feel on the other side of the call. It is literally costing you closes that you are desperately trying to get in the first place. That is the craziest part of all of this, is that the thing that you're doing to try to perform better is the exact thing that's making you perform worse. So let's get into why the self-criticism spiral never gets you to produce the results that you want. Because understanding what's going on helps you actually stop. When your identity is built on performance, when your sense of who you are is tied to your close rate, to your commissions, or where you are on that leaderboard, failure doesn't just feel bad. It feels like a verdict about your value. It feels like evidence about who you are as a person. And when failure feels like a verdict on your identity, your brain doesn't respond by thinking clearly about what to learn or what to do differently. It responds by trying to defend itself or even attack itself, or both at the same time, which is what that 1 a.m. journal entry actually was. An attack, not a lesson, not self-reflection, an attack. And you cannot think your way out of an identity wound with self-criticism. You can only go deeper into it. The closer who's scared about what people think can't ask the hard questions on a call, because asking the hard questions risks the prospect rejecting you. And if your identity is built on approval, you will always choose the more comfortable question over the necessary one. That was me in the attic. I wasn't just frustrated, I was scared. And the fear wasn't irrational. It was just expensive. Every sales call where I kept it superficial, when I didn't ask the tough questions, every moment that I let slide because I was afraid of rejection, that fear actually caused me to lose respect from prospects and lose a lot of money every month. So beating yourself up doesn't address the fear. It just adds shame and guilt to it, which makes it worse. So you're probably thinking, what actually works then? Let me give you a distinction that changed everything for me. Real accountability is asking yourself, what do I need to learn? Spiraling asks yourself, what is wrong with me? And don't get it twisted because they sound similar. They feel similar in the moment, but they produce a completely different outcome. One outcome is oriented toward the future. The other one is a verdict about who you are based on the past. One creates motion. The other one creates paralysis that you dress up as self-reflection. Real accountability looks at the call that didn't close and says, okay, where specifically did I lose the sale? What questions did I not ask? Where did I let the prospect get away with a surface level answer? What do I need to practice? And then it's going and doing the work. Spiraling is looking at that call that didn't close and looking at it as evidence that you suck, that you're stupid, that you are just horrible at sales. That is the difference. Now, I want to go somewhere that you're probably not expecting me to go, but I can't talk about what fixed this for me without being honest about where the fix came from. There's a verse in Romans chapter 2, verse 29, where Paul writes that a person with a changed heart seeks praise from God, not from people. I want to sit in that for a second because I think that's the most practical thing I've ever read about performing under pressure. Paul wrote this from prison, not from a cushy, comfortable life, from a life of beatings, rejection, and relentless opposition. He was writing to people who were being persecuted for their beliefs. This was a man who had actually found the only foundation that doesn't shake no matter what happens around it. So here's what the verse means in the context of a sales call. The anxiety that was holding me back the fear of what prospects thought of me, the inability to ask hard questions because I might get rejected, that was an audience problem. I was performing for the wrong people. I was seeking validation from prospects who didn't know me. I was carrying the weight of every call as if my worth was in the outcome of that call. And when your audience is the prospect, when their approval is what you're reaching for, rejection has the power to destroy you. Every no is now proof that you are an idiot, that you just can't get it right, that there's something wrong with you. Every prospect that goes to you, everyone who says, I need to think about it, becomes more evidence for you. But when your audience is God, the prospect cannot take anything real from you. The calls that don't close cannot touch what is actually true about you. The fear of what they think loses its authority, because the only opinion that counted was already given. And it was given before you ever stepped into a sales call. So that fear that I was writing about in my journal, the fear that was keeping me superficial on my calls, that was costing me commissions, that was driving me to curse myself out at 1 a.m. in my parents' attic, it didn't have a tactical solution. The solution was my identity. I needed a foundation that didn't move when the results were up and down. And that is what changed. Now, practically, here's what this looks like on a real day. Before all my calls now, I remind myself of one thing. I am here to lead, not to perform, not to be liked, not to prove anything to anyone, to lead, to serve, to help a real person make a decision that is actually right for them. And on the days when even that feels like too much to generate on my own, I ask for help, genuinely. I ask the Holy Spirit for wisdom before my calls, as an honest acknowledgement that I am not doing this by myself and I was never supposed to. So dividing this responsibility when we're talking about the impact that we have for the people who show up on our calls, it looks like this. I do the work on the call and he carries the weight of anything else after that. That is the most strategic decision I have ever made. And as a result, I was able to make a life-changing income. And that is my goal for you. So let me talk directly to you for a moment. You know who you are. You've probably been in sales for a while now, and maybe you've had some good months and you've had some really hard months, and right now you are in one of the hard ones, and you are handling it the way I handled it, by adding pressure on top of pressure, by trying to shame yourself into a breakthrough, and it's not working. And you cannot, for the life of you, figure out why, because you're trying so hard. And the trying so hard is visible to everyone around you, and it's still not enough. I want to tell you something that nobody told me in that attic. The problem was never that you're not trying hard enough. The problem is that you're trying to carry something alone that was never designed to be carried alone. So here's what happens when we forget that. We switch back to running on our own fuel without even noticing. The sales calls start to feel like performances instead of service. The outcomes of your calls, instead of them being data, you're using it as evidence that you're crap, instead of just understanding that that's a process. And the weight becomes unbearable because we are holding all of it. And then we allow the intrusive thoughts to come in and take over, and we just cuss ourselves out in our journal, and we think about quitting every single day. The discouragement that drives people to leave sales is never ever about the skill set. It's about exhaustion, the specific exhaustion of someone who's trying to do something by themselves that they were never meant to be doing alone. Real resilience is not, I can take rejection. It's, the rejection was never really about me. And that distinction is everything, because the first version has a ceiling. Willpower will run out, and eventually you just hit a wall. But the second version is sustainable because the source doesn't run out. Showing up when you don't feel like it, getting back on the call after the one that crushed your spirit, asking the questions that scare you over and over and over. Man, that is not a personality trait that you either have or you don't. That's what happens when you're no longer doing this for yourself. And the closer who is no longer doing this for themselves, the one who has shifted from performing and seeking approval to seeking to lead, that closer makes a lot more money than the one grinding themselves into the ground trying to force it. So I want to come back to the words I opened this video with. The version of me who wrote those words sitting in the attic at 1 a.m. cursing herself out on paper genuinely believed that what she needed was to be harder on herself. What she needed was someone to say, hey, hello, you are not behind. You are not broken. You are just tired. And you are tired because you have been carrying something alone that was never yours to carry. So if you are in this season right now and you are looking for a community of people who are working through this exact thing, I have a free community where I do live trainings every single week. And if you are serious about making life-changing income in sales and you are ready to stop pushing through it alone, book a call with me. My personal booking link is in the description. Let's take an honest look at where you are and what it would take to actually get you where you want to be. Because the people who are having the best months right now, they all started somewhere. Most of them started by deciding, you know what? I'm done doing this alone. So if this video found you at the right time, go ahead and share it with someone, because there is someone else who is sitting in their version of that attic and they need to hear this more than they need another video about objection handling. So like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. That's a lot of CTAs. Love you guys.